Hey everyone, we're about to go live. Don't go anywhere. We're just waiting for our notifications to get out and for Yanni to come and sit down with Phil. And we'll be with you in the next minute or so.
We're continuing our whole body discussion, a whole body workout discussion, and today we're going to demonstrate the third exercise in our 5 exercise circuit, best bang for your buck exercises. Today it's all about the squat. We're going to demonstrate how we teach the squat. We're also going to reveal a huge mistake that people are making when squatting, and we're going to get Phil, aka Dr. Phil the physio, to chime in here and explain some really critical squat technique points. All that and more coming up right after this. We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
Hey everyone, in case we haven't met, my name is Rad Burmeister. That's my brother Yanni Burmeister. We're the co-founders of Unity Gym and the co-creators of the Unify Movement System, also known as the UMS, where we take driven people and turn them into superhumans. And the way that we get such astonishing results with our members is that we've created a program that has a balance between strength and flexibility. If you want to know how we do that, the best way to get started is by downloading the free flexibility blueprint. There's a link in this description. As always, we're joined by the legendary Dr. Phil, or Phil White, our resident physiotherapist. How are you,
Or
Phil?
just
Very
moment.
well. Yeah, I'm excited to get into this topic again. Like, people have had some really good questions and comments after yesterday's episode. So, squat, it's a big one. It's my favorite movement. So, yeah, keen to
Let's get out and demonstrate it.
Yeah.
Well, almost. To settle down. First of all, before we dive in, Rad's keen as a bean. Richie, you might have to play with the colour a bit. I look white, like I'm about to die.
Oh, it's got nothing to do with the
Yeah,
shade.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if Rad looks half asleep, he's just come off the massage
I just
table.
had a massage, so
he
you have
just
to
got an
excuse
epic
me.
rub down by Dr. Phil.
All elbows, all the time.
All elbows, all the time. Question of the day. What is your preferred squat stance and why? Where do you like your feet to be? Where do you like your knees to be? We may as well even broaden the topic a little bit and say, what's your favorite squat? Ooh. Front squat, back squat, high bar, low bar, goblet squat, zerker squat. How far could we go? Split squat, single leg squat,
Overhead? No.
overhead
No one
squat.
likes overhead.
No.
Sissy squat.
Sissy squat. Woo! That's Richie's favourite. To trust him to think about it. Yeah, we'd like to know, and we'd like to know why, and let's chat about it. Now, I want to really talk about what we're trying to do here first. The topic is that we're trying to construct a whole body workout that is going to maintain strength and it's going to maintain muscle mass whilst you are away or absent from your regular routine. How did this come about? Because I'm about to take a month-long trip to Europe, and I'm not going to be training in our amazing gym, obviously, because we have no gyms in Europe yet. And yeah, we got on the topic of what it takes to maintain strength and muscle mass, and we pulled out some pretty cool research suggesting that really you can do it in one workout a week if the workout is right, and that's why we're creating this circuit.
So you got to hit all your muscle groups, and you got to do it at adequate intensity. You got to hit whatever muscle groups you want to keep strong. That's the important thing. So we've designed a workout here where you're ticking all the big boxes, and then you've got to do it at adequate intensity that it'll keep your results. So that's why we've chosen these exercises, because they're really easy to scale up and scale down depending on the person. So that's why even though you're traveling, like a body weight exercise routine might be tempting, but if we really want to maintain strength, we've got to be able to hit it with adequate intensity. So
that's
using
exactly
barbells
right.
and dumbbells.
That's exactly right. And anyone can get to a gym at least once a week wherever you're traveling around the world, unless you're in almost. Okay, where I'm going, you certainly can, and that's something that I can do. So, should we go out and smash this squat demonstration? Rad's gagging to do some squats straight after his massage. I can just tell.
Oh, really?
And he's going to be all over this. So, Richie's got the camera set up out here already. So we're going to demonstrate the high bar barbell back squat, and that's really probably our favorite go-to squat. But Phil's going to talk a little bit about the differences between high bar and low bar position, and the differences between the hip fulcrum point and the knee fulcrum point, and what that kind of does. Because here's the thing, and this is the key insight for today's show that I want you guys to take home. There is no one size fits all for squatting. Squatting is a very, very individual process of self-discovery. You need to learn the mechanics of your body. It's very, very different depending on the bone structures in your body. It's very, very different depending on the length, tension, sort of nuances and differences that we all have in our bodies. So the squat is something that we have to sort of explore, and it's really bad that we're getting taught as personal trainers and also fitness professionals that you should be squatting with your feet parallel, your knees parallel, in this sort of perfect little box universe, utopian universe, because the body doesn't function like that. So do you want? I can tell you're gagging to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's just one thing that I want to kind of demonstrate at the beginning, which will give you a bit of an idea of what we're talking about here. So what Yanni briefly touched on there is, like, depending on how you do the squat, you can load up different structures in your body. So we're about to demonstrate a high bar here, where when you go into a high bar position, usually you'll come a bit more forward with the knees, and in that position, where my shoulders, my hips, and my ankles are all in a straight line, and now my knees are out in front of my body, in that position, you can see that the knees will take most of the load, and therefore the quads, in that position. Now, if I was to go into a low bar squat, which is not one we'll be demonstrating, where you go more back with your hips and down, now my shoulders, my knees, and my hips are in a straight line. My shoulders, knees, and ankles are in a straight line, and therefore my hips now outside of that straight line. It means that my hips and my hamstrings are going to take a bit more of that load, so glutes and hamstrings. So you can see how, depending on if I go back with my hips or forward with my knees, then that will shift where it's going to be loaded up more. So if you've maybe had a bit of knee pain, or you're finding troubles with your knees, to continue squatting and not be held back, it might be a good idea to sit back a bit more with your hips.
Yeah, we'll talk about where the different types of squats come into play in your programming when we go back in, so we've all got a mic.
I think that's a useful way to just see how you can really be loading up different parts depending on how you your body.
Yeah. Now, what you're going to see with Rad, and maybe it would be really cool for all of us to jump under the bar and demonstrate a squat with the barbell, just to show you exactly how different it looks. What you're going to see with Rad's going to demonstrate first. Rad is like built for squatting. The length of his femur, that's the upper leg bone here, in relation to his tibia and his spine, is almost perfect for a squat, and you'll see that he basically can fold up like a spring. It's quite beautiful watching him squat, you know. you can see that he doesn't need to lean forward at all. He can hit ass to grass. We call this ass to grass because if he was sitting in some grass, he'd feel it on his ass. But you can see that it's really, really nice. Come around the front and have a look at how much knee out he's getting. It's pretty minimal. And to be completely honest, Rad could probably fudge his squat and bring his knees even closer in, and it would look almost the same. It's not as comfortable for him and it's not ideal and optimal, but yeah, that's like a perfect squat. It's a textbook squat. Can everyone squat like that? Well, let's have a look. Rack it up. Let's have a look at Richie's squat next. Yeah, I'll take the camera. I'm going to take the camera. So Richie is totally different. Just first of all, just stand next to each other. I want you to have a look at the size difference of Richie and Rad. Richie's about 3 feet taller than Rad. He is leaner. He's a different body shape. He has much longer limbs, much longer legs. Look at those beautiful femur. Unbelievable. So let's have a look how that looks in a squat now. So we'll have a look from the side first of all. And we can, Richie can still squat ass to grass, but you're going to see a very different squat here. Look at that beautiful squat. Oh, Richie, my goodness. Okay, go up, give yourself a rest, and now let's go down again and have a look from the front.
Take it easy with that 20-kilo bar, Richie.
Yeah, that's right. Now look at the amount of knee out that Richie gets. Look at his toe and foot position in comparison to Rad. It's a completely different squat. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Richie can squat very heavy with that. He squats 140 kilos in that fashion, and there's nothing wrong with his knees bowing out like that. It's got a lot to do with the length of his bone structure. And the other thing that plays a huge role in how you squat is the pitch of your acetabulum in your hip here. There's slight differences and variances which mean that the femur will be much more comfortable sitting out or much more comfortable sitting more forward. So if you've got a pelvis that has an acetabulum pitch sort of shooting out a little bit like that, and also the femur designed in that way, what's called the greater trochanter of the femur? Is it the?
Just to be clear, the acetabular is the socket joint of the ball and socket joint, and then with your femur, you've got your head of the femur that plugs in there. The greater trochanter is where you have an attachment site.
Ah, that's right. Yeah.
Head of the femur.
Yeah, okay. So the head of the femur can also be pitched differently. So you can have a bone structure like that, you can have a pitch like that. So it completely...
That comes down to genetics, but it also comes down to what you spent your time doing as you've grown up, and people who've played a lot of sports. It's not uncommon that you actually get bony changes that will make certain positions a bit more uncomfortable or a bit more comfortable. So it does vary so much on both your genetics and what you've been doing throughout your life.
That's exactly right. The other big thing that changes a lot is the joints in your ankle. You've got 2 joints in the ankle. One of the joints rolls the ankle side to side, does eversion and inversion, and the talocrural joint goes forward and backwards for plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. So you can have a bone structure that just does not allow that talocrural joint to go into plantar flexion like that, which is required in the squat, dorsiflexion, sorry. So if you've got, and you can, most people can improve the range of movement by stretching the calves and the ankle a little bit, but sometimes you can't. And in that instance, the only way you're ever going to be able to squat comfortably is by pitching the toes out a little bit. So let's have a look at me squatting now, and then we'll have a look at Phil squatting. Lucky last Phil. We're all doing the high bar squat. So for me, I go a fairly neutral foot stance and allow my knees to go out a fair bit. Like they're certainly not parallel and going straight forward. Okay. My squat stance changed quite considerably after I had a knee reconstruction. I used to squat with a little bit of a wider stance. Now it feels more comfortable coming in a little bit more narrow. Otherwise, I get a bit of pressure on the lateral side of my knee where I took the impact. All right, Phil?
Yeah, so for me at the moment, I have a bit of a knee issue where as soon as I go down to that ass to grass position, my knee gets quite angry. So I've got a bit of a meniscus issue there, which I could get surgically looked at, but it's not stopping me in any of my goals, which is triathlons and beach volleyball. So at the moment, that's not as important to me to get to that arse to grass position, because there's pros and cons to each side of things. So at the moment, I'm going for a slightly less range, and I'll have a slightly different foot position to allow me to get into a comfortable position where I can build adequate strength for what I want to do without sort of aggravating my knee.
Yep. And I've noticed that you're doing a bit more low bar.
I'll show you a low bar, but I'll show you a high bar.
Yep. So Phil hasn't stopped squatting even though he's got a knee injury. He just has adapted his squat so that he can still squat okay. And so he's doing a parallel squat, which we call a half squat, which is totally fine. It's still recruiting the muscles. Doesn't recruit quite as many muscle fibers as going all the way down, but it's still absolutely fine. He's still going to build his squat strength. He's still going to build his core strength. He's still going to build the strength in his lower extremities, his legs, extremely well.
Playing beach volleyball at the moment, I need to be able to jump. So when I get to that position, I'm going down to that 90 degrees and exploding from there.
Yeah.
So I'm training within the range that I need for my particular sport.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Whereas for movement, gymnastics, where you need to be in those deeper ranges, this type of squat wouldn't be as useful because I wouldn't be exploring those ranges and building strength.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it depends on your goals again.
That's exactly right. So the thing that I want you guys to look at here is before I show you the cueing techniques for a barbell back squat, the best way to explore your squat is just an air squat, body weight, and even to deload it a little bit by holding onto something fixed so that you can get into it. This is as long as you don't have a knee injury or something like that. Here's the thing with meniscal knee injuries, and both Rad and myself have had them. We've had meniscal tear. Bending the knee can displace a meniscal tear or aggravate it or move it around, cause it to sort of flare up and be quite angry. So when you have had a tear to the meniscus, there are reasonable arguments to suggest that you shouldn't go past parallel. You shouldn't go past a 90-degree bend in the knee. If you haven't, let's say barring, we're assuming that you haven't had a meniscal tear, then you want to go down as deep as you can and just play with different foot positions. Like just see what feels right. See, you might find it feels right out wider. You might find that it feels really nice in close. Find what feels good, and then practice that with some light squatting. Don't load up stupid amounts of weight on the squat bar and then try and find and explore your ideal squat. Okay, very quickly before we go back inside, the 3 big cues for squatting. Depending on where you're racking the bar, if we're racking the bar up high or racking the bar down low, which is a little bit hard for me to do down here, you generally want your grip to be as close as you can comfortably, and there is an element of shoulder flexibility required. The tighter you are in the chest and shoulders, the wider your grip's going to need to be. But we want to work on that. We've had a couple of people commenting, which we're going to answer in there, about barbell back squatting and feeling like it's cutting the blood off to your hands and your back. The idea is the tighter that we can get there, the tighter we can make that upper body, which is going to I was going to say correlate, but it's going to up-regulate neural drive. It's going to really help your core engage, all sorts of stuff like that.
It's a really strong, stable platform for the bar to be resting on. So if you loose through here and you get more movement up through here, then it's going to transfer movement down the chain.
That's the word I was looking for, transfer.
Yeah, so if you have a really solid, strong position at the top, then
you're going to be strong at the bottom. That's right. So the first cue is get the hands in nice and close. When we get underneath the bar, we want to squeeze the bar and almost feel like we're trying to bend the bar around our back, because the harder we grip the bar and the harder we squeeze up here, as Phil said, it creates a platform for the body to brace, and it also up-regulates or increases neural drive throughout your entire body. Then here, usually if we're doing a low bar squat, we focus on breaking at the hips first. If we're doing a high bar squat, we focus on breaking at the knees first. And as we go down into the squat, we should have taken a nice big deep breath. Use as much of the stretch shortening cycle as possible when we go down, if you've got the range of movement. Otherwise, we're only going as deep as our body permits. Do not use the weight of the squat to push you deep into the squat. Only go as deep as your body can take and work on your flexibility and mobility to improve the squat. So Nice big deep breath. Grip the bar. Down we go. Into your deep squat. Back up again. That's as easy. That's pretty much it. Find your range of movement.
One thing that Yanni's doing here that might be a bit challenging if you haven't kind of got the same sort of strength, and Yanni's done more squats in his life than most people have had dinners. So when he's down there, his head's quite sort of looking down, but he's able to keep the rest of his body tall. So for a lot of people, it's a bit hard to kind of maintain that tightness if you're not keeping your chest up and looking up. So when you're doing it, I'd recommend, if you haven't done too many squats, really try and keep that chest tall, even if you're going to that low bar position where you're getting more of that fold, but still thinking about keeping your chest tall and your head slightly higher up, because if you fold through here, that's often the first point of failure when people are trying to lift up, is that they'll lose it there and then...
Yeah, I should have said that. I like to tell people to look up, especially as they come up from the bottom range, not like stupidly with the neck, but you want to keep your gaze high. Yeah, that's right. All right, let's go inside and we'll talk about it and talk about how to use the different squats in your programming. The one that we didn't demonstrate, obviously, is the front squat, and there is reasons for all of them, as we said, and I like to think of the different squats. I'm not going to go into single leg movements today, just considering bilateral double leg squats. You've got goblet squats, Zercher squats, front squats, high bar back squat, and a low racked position back squat. I like to use all of these different squats as like changing rotating the tires on your car. They all have slightly different benefits, and they all slightly vary the load. And it's just really nice. It's a nice way to change things up, and also to suit what you can and can't do. So,
for Olympic weightlifters, they might be doing a whole lot more front squatting. They'll build up their strength in the back squat or high bar squat, and then really spend a lot of time repping front squat because it's a bit more relevant for their sort of sport. So you can use it in different ways depending on what you're doing. But if you're a general gym goer, then I really like that sort of transitioning through.
Yeah, that's right. I even like I think front squatting arguably is the most functional squat out of all of them. But I've trained with footy players, rugby players, rugby union players who have to they take a lot of load tackling people. They've got to push against people in scrummages and things like that. And there are benefits to front squatting more than back squatting in those sorts of sports.
But again, functional is about what your particular function is. So for them maybe, but for other people who
that's right,
are going to be doing different activities like jumping, then that front position is going to be quite awkward and not as translatable to their type of strength. So it depends on your function.
But if you need to carry anything, wouldn't a front squat be
certainly
the most?
And so functional for carrying, the front bar squat will be the most functional, but functional is not a catch-all, I think. I think there's certain things that it's more functional for. Semantics, but
absolutely. So that's really how we use the squatting and different squats in our program. I'm a big fan of doing things that you're not good at, because there is a big opportunity for growth and development there. So if you've never tried front squats, then they might be really, really good for you. And same with low bar back squats. I'm a huge fan if you've got a lower back weakness or glute weakness, to really double down on low bar back squats. I think they're really, really good for that.
Yeah, and for people who had knee pain, definitely see a professional and get it sorted out and find out what it is. But transitioning to a low bar squat where your knees are almost above your ankles, you're barely going into that forward knee travel, that can be a really nice way of maintaining strength and doing a really comfortable squat without aggravating that knee pain. So,
and if you want to really develop your quads, if that's a weak point for you, then focus on high bar squatting and front squatting, and goblet squatting, even sissy squatting, Richie's favourite. There's so many different variations that you can use.
Are really hard.
Yeah, they are. They are. Did you see Kalisha fail the other day on the sissy squat? Yeah. That was so funny. My partner she was in here training and she loaded up a sissy squat and just couldn't get up, and then she was sort of stuck. She couldn't let go of the barbell. It was behind her, and it was
No joke.
freaking hell. She almost fell over. Yeah, it was very good, very good. Okay, so we got a little bit of engagement. A few questions here. Omar Ramirez has said that his favourite foot position is toes pointed slightly out because it allows me to go lower without leaning forward. Absolutely, and that's we explained why that probably is. There might be a little bit of a dorsiflexion limitation there. It could also be that your, the bone structure in the legs needs that. Michael P has said Cossack squat as my number one due to middle splits goals. Perfect. Yep. That's exactly what we're talking about. What are your goals? I didn't even mention the Cossack squat as there's so many. There's the Hawaiian squats, but we didn't go into single leg stuff, so we didn't go that direction. Michael P's also said then back squat over front squat. I'm not sure how to hold the bar on a front squat. The technique looks awkward. It is, but there are also benefits to unlocking it because it helps with flexibility. It's a really big level up to your upper body flexibility to nail the front squat. We get a lot of people who do the, what do they call that? Is there a name for that? Does anyone know if there's a name for that grip on the front squat where you just have the bar going across the shoulders? I know Bass does that a lot.
Yeah, because front squats definitely, if you lack mobility, it's hard to get into that position. So I imagine people who are following the UMS are probably a bit better with their mobility, so it should be easier to get into that position if you...
Mate, we don't let anyone do the sissy front squat. It's all about flexibility. No, I'm kidding. But we're pretty brutal. Yeah. We work so heavily on flexibility. We're unlike pretty much any other program I've ever seen where it's done at a 1-to-1 ratio. So there's no rest. It's flexibility and strength, and you just smash it and get such good results doing that. So we haven't really had that. Like, I don't think I've had to give anyone alternatives from front squatting for a long time.
Yes, sometimes we get members who have like an issue in their shoulder or something and it hurts them a little bit going like that.
Yeah. Hot off the press, we've had some questions come in.
Just one point on Omar, toes pointed out is definitely a great way to go, and as we just demonstrated there's plenty of ways to do it. One thing I do find is that sometimes when people go too far with their toes pointing out, that sometimes their knees will come inward, so they're kind of rolling in through onto their arches and bringing the knees in a little bit. So as you go out, just make sure that your knees are tracking with your toes. So if your toes are going one way and your knees are going forward, then that's less than ideal. But if you can, whichever way your toes are pointing, if your knees are following, then that's...
Yeah, that's a really good point. 20's asked a cracking question here.
So 20 said, how long should I train squats for adaptation before I try to do heavy low reps? If I was training you, I'd say the first thing you have to do is develop a good squat pattern. So you have to play around with that first. Once you've got a good squat pattern and it's comfortable for you, and you start doing loaded squats, you start with higher reps, so 12 to 15 reps if you're new to it, then progress to 10 to 12 and then 8 to 10. And then to go below that 8 rep range, you really want to make sure that you can do good technique even when you're training at that 90-95% max effort, so that you don't start collapsing your knees in and rounding your back and doing these typical fail that we see that Yanni and Phil talked about out there, and that we see a lot in Unity Gym. And then when you do go into the lower rep, heavier weight, you just need to make sure that your technique is really, really good. And it's all just about observing yourself and making sure that you're doing it right. So how long can that take? Each of those periodization processes that I spoke about there, we would recommend 6 weeks. But if you've been training for a while already and you've got some experience, then it could be a lot less. That was what I just described as for a beginner, for somebody that's never done squatting before.
Yeah. 2 things on that I would recommend that is, like, record yourself while you do it, and ideally if you're in the UMS Facebook groups, then you can upload them and get a bit of feedback, because it's really key to get feedback on what you're doing, because you might be able to see if you're doing it in front of a mirror like we were just doing then, you can see the stuff that's happening in the front, but you can't see what's happening from that side view. So that's really helpful. The other thing is, in terms of rep ranges, like going into the low reps, it's much easier to do really good technique for fewer reps. So as Rad was talking about there, doing 12 to 15s, if you're finding that you're really good for the first 5 and then it starts to get a bit messy after that, try doing it in slight cluster sets. So basically do 5, have a little bit of a break so you can freshen up, and then go another 5, or, so like I find it really hard. Like, I don't know if it's a concentration span thing or something, but as soon as I start going above like 8 reps, it can be really hard to maintain that perfect form. So when you're learning a new skill, frequency is really important, and doing good quality at high frequency. So it might mean that even on non-squat days, you just practice the movements without weight.
This is what I was about to say. Squatting used to be my nemesis. It was like the thing that I hated the most, and I was never good at it. I just had really weak legs. And it wasn't until I trained with an ex-professional bodybuilder, Benjamin Pekulski, that I had my biggest breakthrough with squats. And what he suggested I do, we went and did a workout together. It was quite funny. We were in Sydney, and he said, yeah, come train with me. I'm going to this gym, and da-da-da-da. And we went and trained, and this dude, I made the mistake of training with an Olympia bodybuilder on leg day, and he did 100 squats for his warm-up. And he did 100 squats at 70 kilos. He just put 70 kilos on the bar, and then he just did 100 squats, bang, like that. And he did it in 10-set cluster sets with about a 10-second rest in between. And my jaw hit the floor, because at that point, 70 kilos was about what I could do for 10 reps, like max, like that would be it. And I'd do maybe 4 sets of 10 at 70, and I'd be totally cooked with 3 minutes rest in between. And I said, man, what do you suggest I do to get over this hatred of squats? He said, squat every day, but start at a really low weight. He said, your form is okay. Start at 40 kilos or even less, 30 kilos, and do 3 sets of 20 at the start of every workout. And I said, do you do 100 squats like that often? And he said, that was my go-to warm-up to warm his entire body up for about 2 to 3 years of just like, it doesn't matter what day he was working out. And he did it, this guy could squat a lot more than 70 kilos. So 70 kilos was like my 20 kilo or 30 kilo for him. And he just said, yeah, it's such a good movement pattern. And when you can squat ass to grass, it just switches everything on. It's so nice. And so, yeah, I did that for probably like 3 or 4 months. And I started at 40 kilos. And I worked up to being able to do my 3 sets of 20 at 120 kilos. I just did it every day. And I started at a weight where it didn't fatigue me too much.
So my point on that, which I think it comes back to how long you should wait for the adaptation to happen before you go into the heaviness. Like, similar to this guy is Mr. Olympia who you're training with. Like, that guy's been training for a long time, so that training age concept we've talked about before really comes into play. So his muscles, his cartilage, his bone, his ligaments have had a lot of time to adapt to that, and so putting that as a warm up is fine because he's really well adapted to it. Whereas if I was to try 70 kilos for 100 reps right now, like I'd fall to pieces because my muscles haven't adapted to that, and my ligaments and cartilage and everything. So what I'm saying is, if you've not been squatting for a long time, then it's going to take a little while to get those adaptations with the other tissue types, and then don't get too excited by just your strength bolting up quickly because of the neural adaptations. You've got to spend a bit of time greasing the groove, so getting lots of reps in there at a low intensity but at a high concentration to build that adaptation. Yeah.
20's gone in there and said back squats kill my elbows, and this is a common problem if you've got flexibility issues. So I'm not sure if 20, if you're just a subscriber or watching the YouTube channel, or whether you're part of our UMS inner circle. But I cannot stress enough, brother, that is. I'm assuming that you're a man. It could be a girl. That you are needing upper body flexibility work.
Yeah. So if you're tight through your chest here and you try and get your arm up onto the bar, then the point that's going to be the limiting factor there is your if your chest isn't moving, the elbows are going to take a lot of the force. But if you're open through your chest and you're able to get your arms up into that position, then you're not going to get that sort of that pressure through your elbows.
So Michael P has said, how should people set goals for squatting back and front? I do weights for lower body to balance out my upper body ring work. However, I'm not sure what is a good goal for general strength. So, well, the first thing to say is your front squat should be 85% of what your back squat is. So that would be a balance between the front and back squat. If that's not the case, then you want to prioritize one of whichever one is out of balance. And then the next thing is, it depends on what you want to achieve. It's a really, really broad question. We need something more specific, because what are going to be good goals for what? Just so that your legs are good and you can still climb up and down stairs with shopping, you know, for another 40 years, or do you want to be able to perform at a certain level in sports? So the question needs to be a little bit more specific, I think, for us to be able to say what are some good goals. But in the least, front and back squat, front squat should be 85% of what your back squat is.
I really like, as a general well-rounded body, I like to be able to squat double my body weight. So that means for me 160 kilos. And it's a tough goal, like to maintain that is hard, especially if you're into calisthenics. But yeah, it just, I feel really good and strong when I can squat double my body weight for 1 rep.
Mm-hmm. We're out of time,
so
guys.
that will probably take a lot of effort to get to that. And if that takes away from your rings training, which is the main goal, then that's something you've got to
Got to weigh up, yeah, that's right.
So we'll just read one of these comments that we've had over the last 24 hours. So Graham Ricketts has said, got a lot from today's and yesterday's show. Loving the 3 Qs concept and approach to each rep like a golfer's pre-shot routine. Looking forward to tomorrow's show, although I'm not a barbell squatting fan, but this is mainly due to tight shoulders and finding a comfortable grip that doesn't cut off the circulation to my hands.
Graham, that's the exact reason why you need to start embracing squats.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what you should do, the first thing you should do is try playing around with bringing your hands a bit wider. If you bring your hands out wider, that allows for less flexibility. And yeah, don't avoid something because you're not good at it. Get better at it.
Sebastian Oreb, who we've talked about a bunch of times with he's a powerlifter. He's can squat 370 kilos, but his first rep, his fingers are just on the very ends of the knurling, and then as he warms up, he brings it in. That's an extreme case. He's bench pressing 240 kilos, so he's got really tight chest. But as you warm up, you should be able to bring it in. But the key is to keep your chest, your upper body tight, as we talked about in that first cue. But yeah, spend some time doing some chest warm-ups, do some, some of the shoulder dislocates. Look at the Unity warm-up routines.
Heaps of stuff so much yeah, that's
good stuff
right.
where you can spend a bit of time on your, and the way that the UMS is set up as well is when you're training your lower body, you're stretching your upper body. So it works out really well to do some chest stretching and shoulder mobility on the squat days, because it'll make the hand position a lot easier as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and listen, why should you get good at squatting? There's a lot of good research, and there was a really cool study that came out of Argentina a couple of years ago where they linked being able to squat to the floor and stand up again to mortality rates and the early dying, because people, it sort of signifies mobility and strength both together. It's a really great balance of both mobility and strength. And elderly people who could squat to the floor and stand up were far less likely to have a catastrophic fall, injure themselves, and then see that decline in health that usually correlates with that sort of thing. So, it is a great skill to keep for your whole life. It's something really, really worth working on.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in today, everyone. We're out of time, but we will see you tomorrow to continue this series. Thanks for the wonderful questions and for the engagement, and have a great day training today.
Absolutely. And tomorrow we're unpacking the overhead press. And remember, guys, I'm going to link them in all of these videos. We have a huge flash sale on this week for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. You can grab any of our programs. If you think our content is good, wait till you see the amount of quality that goes into the stuff that we actually charge people for. It helps us pay bills, and it also helps you level up. So 60% off sale all weekend, starting Friday US time. That's right, yep. See you tomorrow, guys. Overhead press, military press, shoulder press, whatever you like to call it, we're going there. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.